All right, so if I strike a key, really soft, I strike it really hard, there's obviously some kind of measurement happening. The name for it is called velocity. If you go to physics class, velocity is basically what? Speed. You know, how fast something's traveling, you know, instead of getting really deep. We could say also how quickly or hard I'm hitting the key. Because in some cases you might be hitting like drum pads or something like that. But basically it's a measurement of, you know, quickness and how hard you're striking this thing. So as I strike a key, as a human being, how many possible levels on an acoustic piano could I hit this thing at, a piano? It's almost infinite, right? The problem with infinity is what? It doesn't compute, right? Half infinity, you know, a little bit more than infinity. It just doesn't work. And so what they needed to do is have a number, a scale. And they're going to use binary again, use bits, right? So is one bit going to work? That's going to be like on and off. It's going to be like an organ, which is okay, but maybe we want this to be, you know, sensitive to what we're doing. So how about 4 levels, 8 levels? At what point will you not notice it? And that's the goal with everything digital, right? Isn't that everything in the world? They're trying to make it digital photography, digital. We got to get to a point where we don't notice that it's digital anymore. We go, it's just a movie, or it's just a photograph, or it's just, in this case, striking a key. At 128 levels, can I tell anymore? 7 bits again? Am I noticing it? 87. Definitely 87. I don't know. Actually, I'll show in a minute here. I can actually display it on here, which is kind of nice. But yeah, it gets to a point where I know if I really strike a key hard, that's going to be a really high velocity. What's a sound computer do with that information? Make it louder. You know, if I hit it really soft, you know, turn it down. Does it have to do that? No. You can make it backwards. It's stupid, but you could, you know, hey, hit really soft, it's really loud. Hit it really hard, it's quiet. Really mess up a keyboardist today, right? So, yeah, it's a computer. What do you want to do, right? Here's some fun stuff to do with it. So here's this sound I like a lot. It's like a flute, right? At a certain threshold, I think it's above 100. Switches. And it's based on velocity. It's just math. Hey, greater than 100. Do that, right? As opposed to this, right? Which is probably, you know, if a person's playing a flute like that and they really blow into it, they're going to get that kind of overblown sound. Same thing down here. This is fun down here. When you can grab the MIDI cable from my hand, then you will be the master. So, making sense so far? All right, so velocity, we could do some fun stuff with it like that. So, does it make sense that all of these are one message? If you strike a key, you're turning it on. Are you striking a particular number of key? Sure, you know, some key on the keyboard. Are you striking it with some form of velocity? In fact, they show up as just one big message. In fact, what I'm going to do is switch to another program here on the computer. This is Logic. This is a program I use a lot. And my favorite thing about it is it has down in the bottom of this area called the transport, it's got this thing called an activity display. What I've done is blown it up in this area so I can kind of show you. So already, you can sort of translate what's happening. And so I'm going to play a note here on my controller here, and you'll see a message. I like the symbol. The symbol, the little quarter note, that's what? Note on. I like the symbol for note off. I think it's funny. Right? Anti-note. Note, anti-note. Right? So either you've turned a note on or you've turned it off. All right? So that's a simple message, right? So just to the right of that is something we may get time to talk about near the end. It's a channel. What channel am I sending this information down? There's actually 16 of them. We'll talk more about it later if we get time. What do you think that next thing is? The number, right? Okay, so I'm striking what key? Middle C. We talked about it, right? C3. It does the translation. What's really cool is you don't have to like view the matrix and like figure out what's going on here in binary. It's actually, you know, translating. Oh, hey, that's a C. I'm going to strike it really hard here. Oops, a little too hard. That's a velocity of what? 104. If I play it really soft and try to do 50. Oops. It's hard. So I think 128 is pretty good, right? Right? Do you notice that it also measures how quick I let go of the key? There's actually a note off velocity, which I think is kind of fascinating. So if I let go of a key really slowly, or let go of it really quickly. What could you do with that? Most sound computers are like, I don't know what to do with that. But you could have it so you're programming on a string, and I let go of the keys really quick, and then just the decay cuts off immediately. Or I could let go very slowly and let it languish out. So there's fun stuff to do with it. A note off message, could it create a sound? Sure, it's a message, right? So I had a sampler from Ensoniq called the ASR10. I got to see one the other weekend. I was working at a studio here called Avex Honolulu. I don't know if you guys remember that, in Hawaii Kai, big studio, and these big hip-hop guys were there. And I saw they had an ASR10. I was like, man, I wish I'd never sold that. But it had a gun sound. It was like total gangster rap thing. And you're like, plow, right? So the note on was that sound. And I've heard drum rolls, whatever. It's a message, right? So go with the messages so far. Note on, note off, note number, velocity. You can see it right there, right? I like this in Logic that also is kind of cool. It actually tells you the chords you're playing, So you do some really complex stuff, right? Just making it up, right?
So these are all strung together, each individual thing.
A note, yeah, it's one 24-bit message, 3 bytes. In fact, it's organized in bytes if you want to get technical. This first byte is called a status byte, and then the last 2 are data bytes. The status byte says what type of message and what channel it's on. And the next 2 data byte, in the case of a note on message, is, hey, what note is it and how hard did you hit it? Cool? Good with that? Okay, so I'm going to play a note here. It's a simple note. Now what happened there? Kind of went into like a vibrato thing, right? Why did it do it? It's a duration, like how long I hold it. You can see it. It's actually a different message. What's happening with it? Pretty cool, huh? I'm actually pressing into the key. The key is down, the note on's happened, and I'm adding pressure to the key. It's called aftertouch. It's one of my favorite things to have on a controller. I'm not a keyboardist, right? I'm practicing, right, learning. But as a guitarist, the expression on a guitar and that kind of feeling you in an instrument is something I always crave. I was like, man, I want to be able to control this thing and make it do and so forth. And so to hold a note and be able to squish it in, do something different, I can actually create this new message. It's called an aftertouch message. Not all keyboards do it. Why? It costs money. It costs money to make keys that actually measure how hard you're holding the key down. And so that's something that's why I like teaching you guys the chart. So if you're looking for a keyboard, you can say, hey, I really am interested in the aftertouch thing. I think that's really cool. So here's a question for you. What does aftertouch sound like? It's a trick question, right? It's like everything with MIDI. What would you like it to sound like, right? Basically, it sounds like this, right? It's just whatever the controller is spitting out. It doesn't necessarily have something assigned to it. So here's some fun stuff. Like, I was playing with that Shogun sound earlier. Kind of what a flute might do, right? Down here. So you can make it do a pitch bend. You can make it, you're like, wow, that's fun. Who gets the credit? I think the guy who programmed this thing. I mean, they did a lot of work to make that happen. So let me give you a couple other just quick examples of other things you do with aftertouch. Get in the right vein. Here's brass. Sort of a volume thing. Pretty common one is like. So some kind of vibrato. What about piano? What do you think? It's like, dude, I'm a piano, right? If you start squishing really hard at the keys of the piano, probably not going to do much, right? Fingers turn purple. Could it do something? Sure. What I got to know how to do? Program, right? So I happen to know how to program this thing, I hope. I go to a menu called, go to the menu button, go to a filter. And I'm going to make aftertouch. Aftertouch is going to control my filter.